June 8th. The light's green.
The light is green.
The light's green. So I'm going to
This
just,
is Dave Mechanic. I can hardly hear anything. I don't know if the people are not on mics or what.
can you hear me, David?
I hear you now, yeah.
Okay. All right. I'd like to dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance and move to public input. Is there anyone in the public that would like to be heard today?
We're not doing the pledge?
Hmm?
We're not doing the pledge? Okay.
We could if you'd like.
No, I'm just kind of surprised. Go ahead.
Let's move to, seeing no one who wants to give public input, let's move to the operator's agreement for the streetcar system.
Good afternoon, Sylvia Varian.
Are you directing that to Dave Stack?
Good afternoon, Sylvia Varian, Deputy Attorney for HART.
I'm Greg Bracken, Director of Operations Support.
Joanne Caceres, Director of Budget and Grants.
President English, may I comment before we start?
Sure.
We'll just get right into it. We're
I'd like to
going
comment. Daniel, my mic isn't turning on. I don't know.
The green button's not coming on?
Well, while we're working on this, we'll all test our mics. That one works? Yours?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? I don't know. Hopefully you can hear me.
That one's dead.
Does this one work? Hello? Okay. So, President English, thank you for the opportunity, and I just wanted to share that as a follow-up to our last board meeting, there was a request for us to come before you in a workshop setting to talk about the budget. Have an opportunity for the THS board to get a little more familiar with the budget process, what goes into the budget before we have to come back to you next month for review and approval of the budget. So what we have today is I've been working with the team since our last meeting to come up with a presentation, and again, it's for discussion purposes, so please interrupt at any point if you have any questions. And what we're going to do today is really start talking about our operating agreement, what's in there, as well as the budget. And the intention here is to walk through the process so that we open up the conversation. And if there's any questions about what we are proposing or how we landed where we did, please, just chime in, because that's really what we want to get out of this discussion today. So I just wanted to set the stage for what we're doing today. And the first presentation, the team, I guess I can say the team that will be presenting today consists of 3 of our staff members. So we have them here in the audience, and they're going to make the presentations. Ms. Sylvia Barron and Mr. Greg Bracken, they're going to do the first part to talk about the operations agreement.
There's someone speaking who is not on a microphone, I think.
See, so my mic.
Yeah, I was having trouble hearing.
I don't know what to do. The mics don't work.
It does work because we're voting to be on.
So first, we'll have Ms. Sylvia Barron and Mr. Greg Bracken, and they will talk through the operating agreement and provide some input there. And then after that, we're going to have Ms. Joanne Caceres do a presentation on the budget. So with that, I will turn it over to the team. Ms.
Good
Barron?
afternoon again. Go to the next slide. Today, we're going to do a brief presentation and overview of the operator's agreement. We're going to cover a service model, key operating statistics, HART Streetcar and operating revenues and expenses, THS operating budget, combined HART and THS budget, Streetcar capital expenditures, and also next steps. Regarding the operator agreement, the last term was 5-year term, which expired in 2016. There's a provision for a renewal, 1 year for each year that if it's not terminated or extended, and we have been extending it 1 year since 2016. Rights and duties of HART. HART is responsible for the operation management and maintenance of the entire streetcar system. HART is also responsible for risk of physical property loss for the streetcar vehicles, any real and personal property that HART either owns or HART controls is a risk that is associated with HART. HART also coordinates with the city for the performance of maintenance of guideways, landscaping, traffic signals, interactions, signage and drainage, hardscapes. Any of the major things that need to move forward with the streetcar in terms of major repairs will be coordinated with the city. In addition, the city reviews and approves all operation budget. THS pays HART for services in amounts not to exceed the operating costs set forth in the annual operating budget each year. They also pay for extra and special services and temporary cease of services that are not included in the annual budget. And they do that in the amounts that costs that are approved in the operating budget, not to exceed those rates. In addition, CSS crossing is a responsibility of the city of Tampa, and HART and the city are also responsible for all major repairs and replacement of capital assets which they contributed to the system. So their proportionate share they're responsible for. And those things are not included in the operator agreement, are spelled out in the maintenance plan. So those major repairs, both parties will need to agree to and how to go forward.
And before you is our current hours of operation. Monday through Thursday, 7 to 11, 15-minute frequency. Fridays, we go till 2 a.m. with 15-minute frequency. Saturday to 8:30 to 2 a.m. And then on Sunday, 8:30 to 11. Our total revenue hours currently being billed is 2,360 hours out there. So the next one will roll over to the budget process.
In my share of the presentation, I will cover the tentative fiscal year 22 HART and Tampa Historic Streetcar operating budgets. On this slide, we have the operating statistics, and you can see that our highest ridership in the last few years was 878,000 in ridership. Fiscal year 21 ridership as of April projected to reach the 679,000 trips and 129,600 revenue miles. Focusing on the fiscal year 22, the ridership is expected to increase by 101,942, or 15% over the fiscal year 21 projection, increasing back to pre-COVID-19 conditions in fiscal year 22.
I have a question about that slide.
Yes.
Your cost per service hour, you're projecting is going up pretty dramatically. What's the story?
So we will get to that when we talk about the operating expenses. There's a certain factor there that I will discuss.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So here we have, this is the HART portion of the streetcar budget for fiscal year 22. And the estimated or the tentative budget is $2.8 million, we have a balanced budget between the revenues and expenses. I did want to focus on this slide on the state operating grants, considering that fiscal year 21 marks our third year and final year of the service development grant that was given to us by FDOT, which was $890,000 for each year, 3 years. Nevertheless, we have received another award from the Florida Department of Transportation for an amount of $701,000, which will allow us to continue the free fares another year or two. This is a FDOT Commuter Assistance Program grant, so we will have another year or two of no fares. As you can see on
Question. This is Dave Mechanic. I have a question. At our last meeting, we talked about the DOT grant requiring a local match. Did we determine that the special assessment counted as the local match on that?
So it does require a local match with regards to the special assessment. Ms. Brand, would you have a comment on that? Please.
Sure. So we did get the local match, and we got the local match from the city of Tampa. Mr. Mechanic, we did not use the special assessment funds for the local match. So we can still have another conversation about those funds and how they could be used to enhance the service.
What money did the local match come from then?
It came from the city, and we actually have a presentation today at this workshop from the city. Vic Byte is here, and he's going to give an update for us on that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. LeGrand. And so on this slide, we have the streetcar operating expenses. These are HART's operating expenses. And as you can see, the overall operating expenses increased by $280,000, or 11.1% when compared to the fiscal year 21 budget. The primary increase was in the area of salaries and fringe, was increased by $375,000, or 19%, due to the new hourly rates for the ATU employees. So that would be the answer to the question that you...
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Then the net of all other operating expenses was a decrease in the amount of $95,000 for the fiscal year tentative.
I have one more question on this slide. What constitutes the Tampa Historic Streetcar contribution?
Well, the Tampa Historic Streetcar contribution is the share that would allow any shortfalls that HART would have within its revenues or expenses with regards to the operating expenses. So once we balance out HART expenses and the city of Tampa, any difference would fall under that category of the Tampa Historic Streetcar.
I assume there's going to be a little more detail about that later in the presentation?
Yes. Please, yes. Okay, so we could then go to the next slide is the Tampa Historic operating budget. So the source of this data is provided by the city of Tampa. They are estimating a budget of $1.7 million. This is, again, a balanced budget. And an additional contribution is projected to be paid from the city of Tampa to HART in approximately $278,000 or $222,000, as we see on the slide.
Okay.
So here we have on the next slide is the combined Tampa Historic operating budget with HART. So here we have a projected budget of $3.5 million. Of this $3.5 million, we reduced $939,000, which is the contribution that City of Tampa provides to HART. So we have to net it out. So, but as a whole, we will see the HART and the THS, the Tampa Historic Streetcar operating budget as a $3.5 million. So for the next slide is positions for fiscal year '22, which remain the same as current staffing levels for the past years at 33 full-time employees, of which 2 road supervisors that were partially on the streetcar. We don't currently charge the streetcar operation. So I just have that there just as a side note that we can go into further discussion. So we have the 33. Next slide is based on capital expenditures for the past 5 years. As you can see, HART has been, is estimating to contribute $4.1 million in capital expenses. And these are with regards to vehicle maintenance, 668, well, sorry, it didn't have that, vehicle maintenance and infrastructure maintenance. So these are fundings that HART receives. There's federal fundings, Section 5337 fundings that we allocate and have been using for capital expenditures as needed. So this concludes my presentation. We have next steps in order to get the budget promoted and adopted. And that would be to submit the tentative fiscal year '22 HART streetcar operating and Tampa Historic Streetcar corporate budgets to the City of Tampa for their review. That would be on July 2nd. On August 18th, we would have, you would hold your Tampa Historic Streetcar Board of Directors meeting where you will be requested to adopt the fiscal year '22 HART streetcar operating and Tampa Historic Streetcar corporate budgets. And in September, we do not have a date as of today. There will be public hearings held for the adoption and the review of the HART operating budget for fiscal year '22.
So, we have a board meeting next week. Will we be seeing a firm budget based on whatever comes out of this meeting and sign off on it before it goes to the city? The answer should be yes.
We can, well, that's exactly, that's one of the reasons or initiative that we want to take today is go into a further discussion, see what aspects you would like to discuss or anything that we would need to bring to the table, and then
Sure.
make any modifications based on the suggestions and the discussion that we'll have today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
I have a question
Abby.
for Danielle. Danielle, as we work through the workshop on this and we want to go back and forth through pages, would anyone else, I know I would appreciate a printout copy of this. Is that possible?
Oh, also, Ms. LeGrand, could you be sure that this whole presentation is sent around to all the board members?
Yes, we can make sure that it's sent around to everyone. We can do that right now so that they have it in front of them in their inbox. And then what we can do is, does everyone in the room right now, would you all like a hard copy? Because I can get that done as well. So we can,
Sure.
That'd be helpful.
Okay.
If we're going to discuss it, I
Yeah.
had some notes on different pages. and
Not a problem at all.
Sorry about that. I think you sent it to us via email. I should have printed it out ahead of the meeting.
there's no
So,
problem. We'll get you 3 hard copies.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. B-Day, updates from the city of Tampa.
Thank you. And thank you, President and Board. I'm Vic B-Day, Director of the Mobility Department with the City of Tampa. And thank you for the opportunity to provide this update. This is the first time I'm speaking to the board. And that's why I wanted to introduce myself.
Well, we're very happy to have you here, by the way.
Thank you. Likewise, happy to be here. It's been a difficult year for many reasons, the pandemic notwithstanding. But there have been a few silver linings, I would say, when it comes to the streetcar itself and the system and its future as we see it, be it the Envision Streetcar project or anything else. I think the biggest accomplishment as a city for us is having a great leader at the helm with HART, and I know that we're moving in the right direction on that, and we're certainly happy about it. There are other silver linings as well, and that's our ridership numbers, as you saw, that our ridership did not fall off precipitously quite the same amount as other cities within the nation. I think that's a testament to our resilience as a city and also the system itself. It's something about the system is working that keeps the ridership up, and it's not just fares. And then we've seen an increase in the community's interest in the streetcar assets as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. Today's update will be provided by our Chief Engineer, Milton Martinez, on our Envision streetcar efforts. And it'll cover a basic update, but also a look at how we plan to match the $700,000 grant from DOT. Milton will have details, but I do want to share that we do have the funding. We're finding a way to just get that process through our legal and financial systems.
Great.
So rest assured, the funding has been lined up. And finally, we'll also touch upon recommendations from the FTA's annual report as regards funding for modernization and extension as well.
Excellent.
So at this time, thank you again, and I'll invite Milton to provide the update on Envision Streetcar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Martinez, great to see you too.
Thank you, Vic. Good afternoon, Michael. Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to present on our Tampa streetcar extension and modernization project. As Vic mentioned, I'm the chief engineer for the Transportation Engineering Division of the Mobility Department with the city, and I'm also serving as a project manager for this project as well. The last time we were here was, the last update we provided was around October of 2020, and several things have happened since that time that are of significance that we can touch upon in this update as well. So I've got about 18 slides, but what I'll do in the interest of time is, I think a lot of the background, it's good to go through it again, just in the interest of folks that may not be as familiar with the project, but we'll step through those fairly quickly, and then provide an update on the things that have occurred since October of 2020, since our last update. So as you know, just a little bit of project background. This project was made assisted by funding, financial assistance from the DOT through a grant several years ago. They contributed $1 million towards the development of the project. So it's being done in collaboration with the project management team consisting of the City of Tampa, DOT, HART, and the prime consultant, HDR, and their sub-consultants as well. So the project goals of the project is building on a lot of the planning that took place over the course of several years. There's been a lot of plans to look at how we could expand the service, especially in the downtown core and the expanded center city. So this project is looking to be able to provide and deliver on that, those recommendations that have come through the various planning studies that HART's done, that the Hillsborough MPO has done, and that the city has done to provide that premium transit service and make it more of a commercial, a multi-purpose system through the downtown core. And as everyone is familiar, there's been an explosion of growth in our downtown and center city, and we're anticipating by this project is going to be a key piece of that transportation network that's going to be able to serve and continue to provide the opportunity for additional growth within the downtown core and beyond, and also serve the commercial, the residential, and the educational and other services throughout the downtown, and also serve as a sub-regional link for other extensions to the transit system, including the BRT and other projects that are also in development. So this project is envisioning having a seamless one-seat trip from Ybor through the downtown and northward to Tampa Heights as the current project is envisioned. We're looking at replacing the older heritage vehicles with a higher capacity modern fleet as well, and then to provide the additional infrastructure that supports the operation of that system, including the signalization, the fixed guideway, to be able to give the system the ability to meet the targeted headways. We're looking at 10 peak periods during the weekdays, 10-minute headways, and then in the evenings and weekends, 15-minute headways. And also, a key feature of this, to really have an effective improvement, is not just to extend the system, but it would require modernization of the fleet. So we're looking at, through the process of the project development and feasibility, through that process, we landed on the need to do modern streetcar vehicles. We did evaluate continuing the replica system or using premium bus, but the one that rose to the top was going with modern streetcars for many reasons. So just a quick overview of the improvements. This existing system, which is highlighted in green, we're looking at the modernization consists of replacing a lot of the current stops to be able to be compatible with a modern streetcar vehicle. So their current stops are all high block loading for ADA, and so that would be replacing the current stations with more simplified stops that have the level boarding, and that also accommodate the longer streetcar vehicles. And also looking at making some improvements in some of the turning radii on the track to be able to accommodate a modern vehicle that's currently designed for the heritage vehicle, and also expanding the existing streetcar barn. So one of the things we discovered during the feasibility phase is that there wouldn't be a need, there's enough space at this location that there wouldn't be a need to acquire an additional right-of-way to build another facility for this. And we looked at several different iterations, and all resulted in the ability that we feel pretty confidently that it can be done within the existing streetcar barn. So we'd be looking at expanding the barn to be able to accommodate the modern vehicles. And then the extension would be providing a total of additional 10 stops. When looked at as pairs, it's about 6 pairs. Yeah, with Palm Avenue being at the apex of the system, and that would be where there's the one single stop there, and then it would return back. And we're looking at, out of all the different alignments that were studied, this is the general corridor that we're further developing, which is the Tampa, Florida one-way pair system with a turnaround on Palm Avenue. So that gets us through the core downtown, serves the core, and also serves the Heights, punches through north of the interstate, and then it also serves the Heights and a lot of the other development that's ongoing in that area. And the extension is about a 1.3 mile extension. And this is just a quick summary of, we're looking at primarily fixed guideway for the most of the route, and in a couple places where, due to the constraints of the right-of-way, where the road shifts on Florida, we would have to be in mixed traffic at that point and shifting over from the left running to right running on there for several reasons, operational reasons, including getting out of the queue of the traffic that's going onto the interstate north when you get further north on Florida and Tampa. And then this is just a quick typical of what a station would look like. There would be traffic that would be separated from traffic, and also provide for a station boarding area where the on-street parking lane would be currently located. So whenever there's a station, it would be widened, and we wouldn't have parking there, but we would accommodate the boarding and the lighting area for the station. And as part of this project, there's a lot of other initiatives going on throughout downtown and beyond, with HART and DOT, the city as well, and we've been coordinating on a lot of those different projects and initiatives as we develop this project, just to make sure that those are the moving parts are taken into consideration with our project. So that includes the HART arterial BRT project, the pilot project that is also being developed, DOT's, the Heights Mobility Study and the recommendations that are coming out of that. We're getting to the next stages of that where we're going to be going out to the public to let them know the recommendations and how that, the recommended improvements for the Heights study also work well with the proposed BRT and the streetcar extension project on Tampa and Florida, the one-way pairs. And also coordinating with DOT on their intermodal centers. As you know, they're looking at 5 locations, one in downtown, one in West Shore, one at USF area in Wesley Chapel, and then in the Gateway area in Pinellas County as well. So we've been closely collaborating with them as they reach certain milestone steps to be able to check in and make sure that our projects are still aligning. And then, as you know, Brightline is another project that for a while it was sort of on hiatus, but now it's coming back, and we're going to be closely working with the developers with Brightline as they move forward with looking at extending from Orlando to Tampa and where they plan to land with their station in the downtown core, so that we can be able to provide that flexibility to the customers to be able to have access to the various transit facilities. So the high-level project cost estimates for the streetcar extension and modernization, we're looking at what we submitted in August for the initial rating request is a project total of $234 million for the capital expenditures. And then I don't have the operating expenditures here, but it will be somewhere between $7 to $8.5 million for the anticipated operating expenditure, that year of expense. We did submit a tentative preliminary funding plan that was based on the surtax funding and other miscellaneous sources for the project. And this is going to have to be revisited due to the events that preceded or the events that came after our submittal. So this is one of the areas that we'll be working with HART and the city to as we move forward to refine and redevelop our financial plan for the project. And this also includes the state match as well from DOT, which I'll touch on in an upcoming slide. So currently the project status is we were accepted into project development by FTA in June 2018. So we've been finalizing our project, the PD phase. As you know, the referendum was initially passed on November 6, 2018. We submitted our rating request in August 28th of last year. In December, subsequent to our submittal, the FDOT announced that they would be programming the state matching funds in the order of $67.3 million anticipated. Unfortunately, in February of this year, the Supreme Court decision came that surtax was invalidated. But I think the county and all the other agencies and local governments are moving forward with the plan to put that back on the ballot for the next voting cycle in November of 2022. So in the interim, we did submit our rating request in August, and we did recently, the FTA did publish the annual report on funding recommendations, and the project was designated as currently under review. And I think that's primarily because, and that was last month, primarily because of the situation that occurred with the surtax in February. So there's some things we were coordinating with FTA on making sure the things that we can do in the meantime to get the project into place, additional analysis and documentation that we'll need to gather in coordination with HART to get the project to a place where we can take advantage of any funding opportunities that as they present themselves in the near horizon. And then some of the things we are continuing to do. So although the surtax funding was invalidated, we felt strongly that there's a lot of things that we can still continue to progress with the project. in order to be in a position to take advantage of the opportunities as they become available. So that includes, we did, as I mentioned earlier, land on a general corridor of Tampa, Florida. We are continuing to complete our NEPA Section 106, going through that process and refining the alignment, and also continuing to coordinate with FTA. We have bi-monthly conference calls with them to brief them on the status of the project, and they also provide feedback and guidance as well. Mm-hmm. That's part of the small starts process that we're in currently. We're also continuing to coordinate with all the related projects, including some of the private developments. We know that the YMCA, for example, on Palm Avenue is coming in for redevelopment, and there's a really good opportunity there to do something with them in collaboration to provide a really good integrated station stop there. So we're continuing to do those things. We'll be coordinating with the DOT with regards to their New Starts funding that they program to get the project on the tip, and also to program the state fundings to move it out to an outer year, because initially it was programmed for this fiscal year. So we'll be doing that starting in July so they can assist them with reprogramming so that it could be in the tip by October of this year.
Excellent.
And then we're going to be coordinating with HART on re-looking at the existing governance documents. As you all know, there's a tri-party agreement and various other documents. There's about 18 documents that touch on the governance of the system. And so we'll be looking at some of the things that we can improve in the existing agreements to get it situated for the future revisions or amendments that will be needed to accommodate the modernization or account for the modernization and extension of the system. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be following the same pattern that we did with the prior extensions. Whenever the city or HART developed, we've done two prior to this modernization extension. There have been two initial facilities, and then the phase 2A extension that brought it to Whiting. And whenever we do a phase, we would amend the agreement, the interlocal, to account for that, and then identify who the cost shares and who's the roles and responsibilities for those phases of the project. So on this one, that's something that we'll be looking at, working with HART on developing those agreements to be ready for when the next phase is ready to move forward within the FTA process. So one of the questions that was asked earlier had to do with the additional funding that is needed to match the new DOT grant. So last year in our surtax plan, we had for our 21 surtax plan, which was approved last year, the city had an anticipation of the DOT grant being expiring by the September-October timeframe of this year. We had put in our budget continuation of the funding to continue the free fare service on the streetcar. However, due to the situation with the invalidation, we had to look now at other opportunities. So we in conversation with DOT has come through with HART's latest request to continue that. But this time, unlike the previous grant that didn't have a local match requirement, this one does. So it's split where the total amount estimated is $1.4 million. The state is going to be providing $701,000 roughly, and they're looking for the commitment for the local match of $701,000. So the city currently is anticipating that we will fund that match with those various funding sources. We've been having conversation with the Tampa Downtown Partnership. Currently, it looks like they will be able to commit $60,000, and then between the city mobility department and the downtown channel-side CRAs, we're going to make this work. As Vic mentioned earlier, the things we need to work through is the process for getting this funding in place and available, whether that needs to be a separate standalone agreement or whether that can be part of built into the process of the operating budget process to get those funds, and whether the other partners, the Downtown Partnership and Channel Side CRAs, if there's any approvals that have to go through their boards as well. So we'll
Sure.
work through that. The funding, we're committed to provide that funding because we really strongly believe that the system, really, we want to continue that fare free system.
Question, Abby?
Hello. Did we ask the Ybor area to also contribute, the YCDC?
I don't, no, yeah, they have a smaller, we did not. The short answer is no.
Okay.
But because I think with the funding, had we encountered a shortfall, then we would have maybe cast the wider net, but I think we were able to get that commitment.
Could you go back to that previous slide for a second, Milton?
Yeah, I mean, technical, it's.
So the downtown and Channelside CRAs already each contribute $150,000. So this would be in addition, and your feeling is that they can afford to do that?
Yes. I don't want to speak for them, but if they're.
If I may. So we've discussed this with the CRA managers, and they feel good about the fact that they can come up with the funds. Now, having said that, I'd like to reiterate the city's commitment to make sure that we find the matching funds here.
I can tell that.
Yes.
I sense that.
Okay, I think that's the
now-
most important part.
You know, Mr. Mechanic and Miss
Mr. President, I'd like to just make a comment about this.
Sure. Go ahead, David.
I just wanted to say thank you to Vic and Milton. I am really impressed by the city's decision to use mobility fees, CBD mobility fees for this project. I mean, that money has been collected for years, and there are very few, you know, originally this was a road impact fee ordinance, and there weren't any or many roads that could be approved downtown. They certainly weren't going to widen any. And so this is a phenomenal use of the multimodal fees that have been collected for years. And I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad it's going to a pure transit project. It's not tied to a road project, because for so many years, people were saying that those fees could only be spent on roads, and that is not legally correct. And I'm just really glad the city has seen its way clear to allocate these funds. I think it's great.
Yeah, this has been a pet peeve of Mr. Mechanic's for a while, and I agree with him. I should also tell you, if you're not aware, that Mr. Mechanic and I, Ms. LeGrand, and Ms. Doring Ahern are all board members of the Tampa Downtown Partnership, and Ms. Ahern is the incoming vice chair. So we will be discussing this and hopefully can get the right answer for you.
It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both very much. Is there more, Milton?
I don't think so. Let me, I think that's it.
So we've had $900,000 for 3 years. We're going to end up with $700,000, and I assume the shortfall, the difference, comes from the city. What's left of our endowment fund, I don't really know the answer to that, but I would assume that that you all and Ms. LeGrand do know the answer to that.
I'll make one comment
Sure.
with that regard. The original funding was $2.7 million over 3 years to operate the system, but I think my understanding was that if it took less funds, that money can still continue to be used to operate the system beyond the September 2021
Good.
timeline. So if they, it's probably going to be close to that amount, but it wasn't necessarily that it was going to require 900,000 per year. If it turned out that it was requiring less, that money will still be available to continue the service beyond the original 3 year horizon.
So
I don't
you,
know, yeah.
good, so you all are ironing that out, basically. That's good news.
And just say again, I know it was mentioned, but how long does this new DOT grant with the city match, how long does that last us?
I will I can defer to HART, but I think from my knowledge of seeing I think it's going to go, it's expected 2 years, but I think it goes through June of 2024 as the expiration date of the grant, but it's I think it's anticipated to be for 2 years.
We're going to spend it in 2 years,
Yeah.
probably, yeah. No doubt.
Great, okay, that's very good.
I'd also like to reiterate
Thank you.
and appreciate the city's commitment to step up and help us with this, especially in light of not necessarily knowing that we'll get the funds from the CRA CACs and the partnership, that you can already go on record of saying you're going to find a way to fund this is
Absolutely.
really enlightening. Thank you.
No, this has been a strange year and a strange financial year and ridership year, and it's probably been quite a eye-opener for Ms. LeGrand coming into all of this. I want to thank you all and the mayor and Ms. LeGrand and her staff for weaving all this back together. I feel much more secure than I did 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I interrupted the end of your presentation, I think.
No, that was pretty much the end. This is just a recap of the overall timeline, including the FTA, due to the surtax decision. That's kind of we're kind of reevaluating our options at this time, so it's kind of adjusted the schedule for the project as exists, that was originally envisioned. So it shifted that out a little bit more, but we feel that, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things we can still progress. There's also an opportunity now as we rebound back to, normal operations, where one of the things we wanted to do was collect the work with HART on the boarding, the surveys, the destination and origin destination surveys. That information will help inform our modeling that we need. So that was a piece that we still needed to do. So I think this will give us that, that opportunity now that to when as the ridership picks back up and things come back to normal, that we can collect that data in our project. So there's a lot of things we will still continue to do to complete, so that we can be in a position to take advantage of the funding opportunities as they present themselves.
So the origin destination surveys, is that something that HART's going to conduct? I think that's great. I'm very pleased that we don't have to alter the service, because we're already seeing an enormous step back into the kind of normal world. Ridership is going up. There's a lot of economic development. People are rebounding from a very difficult 14, 15 months. So thank you very much. Any other questions of Mr. Martinez? Thank you, Milton.
Thanks.
Ms. LeGrand, anything else you'd like to add?
So, again, I'd like to also thank the city and Vic in particular, because when we had our last meeting and we learned that we received a grant from FDOT and we needed to find a match before June 30th so we could sign off on this agreement and feel comfortable that we weren't, cashing checks that we don't have any money to cash. I reached out to him and he told me, I got you. And that is literally what he put in the text message, I got you, and he had me. So for someone who's new to the region, new to meeting folks, to know that I have a partner in the city that when I need help, he's there for me, and he really did make it happen. So I do want to go on the record of thanking him and looking forward to furthering my partnership with Vic and getting to know him even more professionally in this space as we move this project forward, as well as other projects in the city. The team is eager to hear your thoughts on the budget. As you can imagine, again, within 2 weeks, we all sat around tables very late at night. Joanne Casares and her team have been working tirelessly to make sure that we had the right numbers, and then also just the due diligence to really figure out, especially for me, I'm new, what is THS? What is the relationship with HART? What is it that we do how are our relationships connected? And I thought it would be great to have a couple of discussions today with the time that we have remaining to talk about some of those things, you know. As you heard, our contract ended in 2016, so we're on an automatic renewal. You know, is there an opportunity to have conversations about, you know, actually getting a new contract? And, you know, is there the opportunity, some of the positions that we are funding, is there an opportunity to throw that back on the hat? You know, just a lot of conversations that I think we can have on a higher level that may not impact the budget this cycle, but to at least start having that discussion. So with that, I open up the floor to any comments. You should have your hard copies in front of you, and those on the line, on the board, you should have in your inbox the actual deck that we went through. If not, just put a note in the chat, and the staff will make sure you get your electronic copy. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions or discussions.
Any questions from board members?
Do you want to start?
Go ahead.
I think HART has been doing a great job with managing the streetcar. And I understand we started in 2016 with the annual renewal because there were discussions of a dissolution of the tri-party agreement. And that's kind of why we were going to the every year
Yeah, you're probably right.
thing. So my first question would be, has there been discussions with the city whether they're comfortable with another 5-year agreement? And if they have any intentions?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Vic might.
At this point, I don't really have a comment on that, but we are working with HART towards a solution that works for all.
Okay. Well, I think HART's done a great job, so if.
Yeah, HART has done a wonderful job, and you know, the city's always been a good partner, but when it all started, there weren't very many people in the city that really got it, except the mayor, who did, which is why we got the thing built in the first place. But it's been a sea change. The city it's a different city government. It's a different form of leadership. It's a different form of transportation, planning, and engineering. I think Adelaide brings a different perspective to HART as well. Today's probably not the day to make the argument, but I will, that the Tampa Historic Streetcar has been key since before the system opened. I think that once we really begin to move forward with a funded extension, this board and perhaps an expanded board with more property owners or community partners involved will once again become very important in the economic development aspects. That's a big operating budget, and it's going to probably want an extension of the special services district. I mean, there are a lot of issues that can be not best handled, but that can be significantly facilitated by the private sector. That was the case originally. It's how we raised all the money when we got started, and I feel pretty strongly that even though the city is much more engaged with HART and the streetcar system than it used to be, I think that THS is still a great check and balance for both of you large organizations, frankly. So that's all I really want to say about it today, but I think you have probably heard my feelings before.
So, and I apologize for, with me being probably the newest member on the board, I did getting to see this for the first time as far as the way the operating budget is kind of set up. I'm going to apologize in advance for stumbling through this.
That's fine.
One of the things that I kind of, when I was going through here, and if you guys want to look at slide 10 in the, for the operator's agreement deck, there's the spot down here where we're looking at operating expenses, and it looks like it's labeled out by the streetcar. It looks like what the streetcar board pays, and then what HART pays. Am I getting that correct?
So you're looking at slide 10, it's titled HART and THS operating budget, is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And then your question is specifically on,
On the operating expenses for the THS, it's the second part of the, without me, I can, yeah, we're,
Right.
so on the bottom part for operating expenses, we've got the THS label and the HART label, looks like, for each individual line.
yes.
So am I right in, so THS is responsible for the lines THS, and then HART is responsible for everything else, correct?
That is correct.
So I'm not a math major, but there seems to be a very large amount for the last 5 lines that HART is responsible for, and it seems like a very small amount for THS. Just kind of, are we ever going to get to a point to where THS is going to be sustainable by itself? Or, I'm just trying to figure out with, especially since, I'm the HART appointee for the Streetcar board. I'm trying to figure it, I'm kind of in a funny spot here, trying to figure out, I see a lot of money coming from HART to be able to prop this up. And I'm just trying to, again, I know I'm the new guy here, but I'm just kind of trying to figure out, why have a separate entity doing this when it looks like HART is the one footing the bill for all of this?
Well, HART, if you look at the top of that slide, the bottom are expenses, and
Right.
but the top are revenues, and frankly, all but $1 million comes from other sources than HART. In other words, THS manages a special services district. The advertising revenue accrues to both accrues to us and the vendor.
So all those revenue sources go directly to the Streetcar board, or to the Streetcar?
Yeah, absolutely.
district? Okay.
Yeah, every nickel that we generate. When we started the system, Mayor Greco did not want general revenue, ad valorem revenue, to support the operating budget. So Mr. Mechanic and I and several other board members and the executive director at the time, Sharon Dent, we raised $6.5 million and created an endowment. Just before we opened, and that was intended to, we intended to take, as if you inherited $6.5 million, you'd be advised to just take out 5% a year, so you maintain the corpus. That was our goal. Just before we opened, CSX stopped us and said you can't cross our tracks without insurance, and nobody had the revenue to pay it but us, because we had this $6.5 million. So we've used most of that endowment fund, which came from naming rights and other sources, naming rights for the system, naming rights for cars. We've spent what amounts to that entire fund for the CSX insurance all these years. The city doesn't pay that, HART doesn't pay it, THS has been paying it. That endowment, I don't know what's left in it today, but I don't think it can't be $1 million, and I don't think we've been trying not to use it for several years. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, if I could just help with that question, because if you look at that chart that we just looked at was a combined chart, and if you go back a few slides, you can see the HART portion, and you can see the THS portion, and then we do the combined chart. I would just add that although we do have expenses related to HART, related to the THS, the theory is that we're supposed to be made whole. So the revenues that you see cover the expenses, but as Joanne said earlier, there are some expenses that are not covered. There may be a topic of discussion in the future. The expenses that she mentioned were to staff employees that help that part-time with the streetcar operation, and there may be some overhead that's not covered. but the theory is that HART is supposed to be made whole for the expenses incurred for the streetcar operation.
Okay, and, I apologize for not having probably better questions on this since I just got the deck today, so I know we're gonna have some more opportunities to be able to take a look at the budget as we're developing it in the
Right.
next few weeks. as
Yeah,
we're
well,
getting to-
we're going to have to adopt a tentative budget at our next meeting because the city has to have it by
Right,
July
no,
1st.
I understand that. I'll have plenty of time to be able to come up with some more questions.
Absolutely, and feel free to reach out to the HART staff in the interim.
Certainly
And that
will.
was my next comment. We are here for you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us so you have your comfort level in order to approve the budget when it's presented to you.
Will do, thanks.
Yes, Abby?
Mr. English, could I offer another comment about that question?
Sure.
Sure.
Eric, I'm not really answering this from an economic perspective, but there are really two principles under this agreement. The two owners of the system, the city of Tampa owns the right-of-way and HART owns the rolling stock, and THS is not really a principal. I mean, obviously, we are a third party of the tri-party agreement, but we were created because we were, if you will, the community liaison that facilitated the HART operation and the city's desire to have a streetcar there. So I don't think it was ever intended that THS would be a major funding source for the operation, although we were, as Mike just mentioned, able to supply the shortfall for many years. But the intent was not that THS would be the major financial contributor in this three-party agreement. We're really more of a facilitator and a community liaison. And I think Mike's idea of maybe expanding the board membership is heading in the right direction so that we have more representation from the community and the stakeholders who both enjoy and help pay for the system.
Thank you, David.
And thanks, David, for a little bit of the background on that. And, again, I want to be able to try and take a little bit more of a look at at some of the numbers, but also, at the original agreements at some point.
Yeah, they're all
understand
available
that
everything's available for you. I think,
Yep.
in fact, I think Sylvia and I have been emailing. She's located almost everything that you might be interested in.
Right, and because, one of the things that we've mentioned a couple of times regarding a tri-party agreement, and I know that the organization certainly serves a purpose, but I'm trying to figure out, when it comes to a tri-party agreement, when it seems like two of the parties are really carrying a lot of the weight. I just want to make sure that, there's the ability for, especially on the HART side of things, that there's, with some of the plans that Ms. LeGrand has and that the HART board as a whole has, I want to make sure that, there's going to be, a good discussion on those, together. So at some point, and again, I'm gonna take a look at these a little bit more in some of the original agreements and talk with Ms. LeGrand, and as we are getting closer to finalizing that budget, and if we have to talk about the agreement later on, then
Sure.
then we can do that.
Well, absolutely, and I'm sure that conversation's coming. Ms. Doring?
Yeah, I feel like we
Ayer?
end up serving as the extra set of eyes. That's probably our largest role. I do have two questions, and that's exactly as the extra set of eyes. On page 9, for CSX insurance, my understanding was that was being decreased substantially?
No, I think this past year it was not $720,000. 26. I think it was less. You might look into that, Ms.
Did it go
LeGrand.
down about 150,000 or
Well,
so?
we reduced the liability coverage substantially, which reduced the premium last year. We haven't really talked to our insurance agent about it again this year, but it's another conversation that you should hear yourself. Fundamentally, the group of insurers took such bad hits over the past couple of years that many of them dropped out of the market, which made our insurance much more expensive. So it remains to be seen what our actual premium is going to be this year.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought Mr. Mealich had reported that we were going to have a significant savings
Well, this
on our
guy,
premium.
we paid the seven, I can't see the number, but the big number ended up being less this year than it was last year. And the coverage went, we knocked it down from 100 million to 75 million. His goal is to reduce it to 50 million. CSX made no commitments to that. In fact, they made no commitment to keep this as it is. So, I mean, that's an open discussion point.
Okay. I'd like to just reevaluate those numbers. And then streetcar advertising, in what was the actual for 21? Or I guess we don't have an actual yet because we're still in it. But I imagine it was less since, our friend COVID was here. But why are we reducing it yet again for 22? The proposed budget for advertising. Hi.
Tyler Owen. So since the new agreement with Vector, and now that we're doing the guaranteed, the 115, since we've merged with HART, so that's why you're going to see the adjustment for the rest of 21. So we're getting that 28.5 every quarter right now for the advertising agreement. Well, it probably will finish a little bit higher because of Super Bowl and because we sold some premium ad space. So when 21 finishes out, but for 22, obviously, ridership's starting to return and advertisers, but I think we'll be in a little better spot because we do have a couple sponsorships that are actually getting ready to come on board. We're just kind of finalizing some details there. So, hope that answers your question.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Ms. Grant, I think unless there's something you'd like to discuss, I think we're good today.
I do have one more.
Sure.
Pardon me. Over the years, we've talked about an executive director role. Is that of interest at all at some point in the next 12 to 18 months? Is that something we want to consider for this next budget or?
Executive Director of the Streetcar?
Of the Streetcar.
So this is the first time I'm hearing of several things today. Today is a glorious day. So I will put that down under other things that I've heard for the first time today, and maybe we can come back and revisit that. But I have never heard of that before, so definitely don't mind having maybe an initial conversation offline, and then we can bring it to the full body just to get some background on what the expectations were and what that role's purpose was, just the background. So let's put that down. Thank you.
We can sidebar as well. Thanks. That's it for me. Thank you.
Mr. English, we did not hear the question. We lost audio. So if you could repeat the question that Ms. LeGrand was going to take back and follow up on.
Do you want to repeat yourself into the mic?
Sure. My question was if there was any discussions of, any future discussions of hiring an executive director for the streetcar.
Thank you.
I think today on these spreadsheets, it shows a director, but I'm sure that's you.
No, the director of Streetcar is Brian Allen. He had to go and receive a vehicle, streetcar vehicle, so he's actually in Omaha, Iowa. So he had to fly out to Iowa this morning, so he was unable to make it here today, but he has to physically inspect the vehicle before we can receive it.
Yeah.
But he is the director of Streetcar. So I don't know if the intention if the executive director for Streetcar is synonymous with the director of Streetcar, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, that's news to me too. I don't know.
Do you remember when the port asked us specifically to hire one? We a few years back, when we were asking the port to fund more of the streetcar runs along their properties, they suggested that in order for them to consider it, that we hire an executive director for the streetcar so that we are adequately giving the attention for growth for the streetcar. That never went anywhere because we weren't in a position to hire an executive director. But
Well,
that was
you
one of
know,
the
I mean, I think that
suggestions.
falls into the governance issues discussion, frankly. You know, if this extension happens, it will transform the streetcar system. It will transform HART in many ways, too. One of the things that you might look at when you examine the budget is if the referendum happens again and it passes again and it's considered valid, HART is scheduled to put a lot of money into that extension, a lot of money. That's their money for transit. That's a big deal. The system is going to, and the cities has quite a bite. It's going to be a much bigger system. It's going to hit a critical mass and carry several million people a year. I have no doubt. It is going to stimulate economic development all over the system, including the north end of the downtown. And at that point, when it may be, affordable and perfectly reasonable for you to have someone that you might consider an executive director who reports to you and works with Brian, I think that's what you're talking about. So that's certainly something we can talk about. We haven't had, and you might not be aware of this, but things were pretty tight before the state showed up with that $2.7 million, and the system was not doing well. It was running on 20-minute headways. It had no morning hours. It had reduced evening hours, and it was only carrying about 300,000 people a year. And it had been like that for some years when our endowment we exhausted it, and so we ran out of extra funding. The city was as helpful as they could be. The funding from CRAs has been increased several times, but this new system is going to be a much bigger deal, and it's going to be a bigger financial operation, and it's going to be a bigger operation in every sense of the word, and it's going to carry a lot of people, and I think it's going to drive, as I know Vic hopes, and his colleagues hope, it's going to drive future extensions, which HART also wants very much to do. So this is this next step is a big deal. It's a big, big deal. It's going to change HART, it's going to change the city, and it's going to certainly change the streetcar system. So, anything else? We good?
I think if you guys are good, we're good. I have a couple of action items, and I know the team has been taking notes, so we will type those up and get back to you for some of the asks that were requested. And then we'll also be prepared for the next board meeting to incorporate any comments that you may have prior to the meeting. So please, those on the phone as well as those in the room, if you have comments that you didn't share with us during this open forum, please do so, and then we will document and present them at the next meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
Are we just wrapping up the budget portion and then we're moving on to more of the discussionary type ideas, or are we wrapping up entirely?
Today?
Yes.
We've got a few more minutes if you'd like to
Okay.
bring up some other ideas.
I would like to bring up a few more ideas. One being the rubber wheel extension and a potential pilot for that. I don't know how many vehicles we have in our rubber wheel fleet and where they are being purposed right now. I know that there's been discussions of, now that we are going to be able to have ridership back up with conventions and all the residents using it, and we are going to our CACs, our CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency Community Advisory Committees. It's a six letters there. And asking them for not only the funds they've been contributing, but extra funds, that there might be a spot. Each year we go, I sit on the Channel District CRA, CAC currently, and in the past I've sat in the downtown one. And each year we go to do our annual request for funds, and they ask, what did you do this year to increase over last year? What have you done to make it better? And this year, I think everyone was very understanding of the issues at hand across the world that everyone dealt with. So there wasn't that much there. But I do think in years preceding, or years to come, if they can, as we continue to ask for more funds, they're going to ask for ways we're continuing to improve. And I think one of those ideas might be a rubber wheel extension pilot as we plan to go into a fixed route through up to Tampa Heights. And
Oh, you mean before we actually build it?
yes,
I think I've heard the city talk about that possibility too.
and I don't know what kind of funding the Tampa Heights CRA has, but that might be an opportunity there. I know that, they're not as mixed use, so I'm not sure what that budget looks like. But there may even be some developers in that area that also want to contribute to such a pilot, and just something we want to have on our radar. And then additionally, when I was at my CAC meeting for the Channel District CRA last week, it was addressed by a couple of members. Well, first off, really exciting news. In the 12 or 13 years I've been members of this, we've never gotten more than 50% raise their hand when I said, who rides the streetcar? So it was really great to see every single member of the Channel District CAC say, yep, I'm riding the streetcar. That was a huge tip of the hat to HART and to the streetcar. So thank you for that. It was addressed that there's still a perception by riders that we aren't consistent.
That we aren't what?
We aren't consistent in our timing or arrival and departures.
Really?
Yes, even though we report on it each month and we're usually 95% or better, there's still a perception. So I was just curious if there might be like a how's my driving campaign possible. You put on the back of trucks it kind of keeps everybody on the same page. It gives the riders the mental perception that if there were an issue, there would be somebody they could reach out to. We could also then, when someone suggests that, we have the ability to come back and be like, no one reported any, late or early departures. So just a thought, I don't know, that might be more of a maintenance and management nightmare than it is a benefit, but I just thought from a perception, it might be helpful. So those would be my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look into these, and some of these are very interesting, and also some campaigns that we're launching on the bus side, so it doesn't seem like it would be a difficult thing to do it across the board. And you're right, sometimes the perception becomes the reality, even though it's inconsistent with reality, right? So we need to definitely manage that and be proactive. So thank you for sharing those ideas.
Sure. Thank you.
So David and Cal Hardy, any final comments from you guys?
Yeah, can y'all hear me? Just
yes.
Everybody, yeah, okay. Just to touch on one of the things that was mentioned about pilot and maybe rubber tire, we are working with FDOT on a lane elimination for Tampa and Florida right now. So the city has been working on a bus rapid transit pilot project where we're designing it in-house right now, where we would run on right side running and actually have a dedicated transit lane that would be shared with as a bike lane as well. So we have been looking at that, and that was from Palm all the way down to, our project was Palm all the way down to Kennedy. However, FDOT is also looking at a resurfacing project on Florida and Tampa as well, that depending on what funding opportunities they have, may include dedicated guideway where you could do left side boarding and actually change the lane to where the streetcar kind of would run right now. So whenever I get a chance to I was going to throw a couple slides in there just to kind of show what we already have and kind of give you updates on that. But we're starting that process now, and then we have a meeting with FDOT either this week or next week, I can't remember which one, to start the public input for the lane elimination process. There's a whole process you have to go through. So I just wanted to add that, and I'll give a little bit more of an update whenever I give my presentation to kind of talk about the city projects around the streetcar.
Thank you, Cal.
Thanks.
David, anybody else, any other board member zooming in?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, good. I think we've exhausted the subject today. So thank you all very much for coming and staying and sharing budgets. You've done a lot of work since last week or 10 days ago, and I really appreciate it, Ms. LeGrand. So I declare this meeting adjourned, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.